Coming to you from his studio in downtown San Francisco, this is the Backstage Bay Area podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Roby, and this is Backstage Bay Area. Thanks for joining us. My guest today is one of the most inventive trumpeters in creative music. Berkeley-born Steve Bernstein has spent more than 3 decades blurring the lines between jazz, rock, film music, funk, and free improvisation. He's a fearless composer, arranger, and bandleader whose collaborators have included Bill Frisell, Lou Reed, Leonard Cohen, Levon Helm, Laurie Anderson, and the great Alan Toussaint. He's best known for leading the long-running quartet Sex Mob, a band that has built an international following by taking familiar music in wildly unexpected directions without ever losing its sense of groove, humor, or adventure. He's also celebrating the release of 2 fascinating companion albums, Resonation Trio and Ultra Resonance, which explores the same music from completely different perspective. Steve Bernstein joins me now. Stephen, welcome to Backstage Bay Area.
Thank you, Steve Roby. Hello, Bay Area, my hometown.
It's great to have you on the show. Hey, before we get started, where am I reaching you today?
I live in a little town called Nyack, New York, and it's about 20 miles north of the city, but it's like a little village, and it's a little mini Bay Area. Me and my wife's also from Berkeley, so we laugh because, you know, if you grew up in Berkeley, you had the hills on one side and the bay on the other, and we have a hill on one side and the Hudson River on the other, so it's
nice.
like little mini Bay Area for us.
All right. It sounds interesting, and I understand that you're also going to be going on tour soon.
Yeah, I'm leaving to go on the road with Laurie Anderson, and Sex Mom's been playing with Laurie Anderson for over 3 years now, and this is our second tour. This is our second show we put together. But with Laurie, it's not a concert; it's a show, you know, because it's Laurie telling her stories and music, and there's a visual element that runs the entire piece. And we're actually coming to the Bay Area with that project in September.
Oh, nice. As you mentioned, you grew up in Berkeley during an extraordinary musical era. We were talking about some of those days back in the 60s and 70s. But your career became closely associated with New York's downtown scene. I'm curious about those early years. What first drew you to the trumpet, and when did you realize you were more interested in creating your own musical language than in simply fitting into an existing jazz tradition?
Well, believe it or not, when my parents moved, I found a scrapbook I had made when Louis Armstrong died. Now, do the math. I was born in October 1961. Louis Armstrong died in July 1971. Means when I was 9 years old, I was already obsessed with Louis Armstrong.
Wow.
I must have been a weird kid. I mean, obviously I was. And you know, Berkeley school system had this amazing program started the brainchild of Dr. Herb Wong, and it was Phil Hardiman and Dick Whittington who ran it. And we started improvising in 5th grade. And if you were really advanced, you could do it in the 4th grade. Most of us started in the 5th grade. And thanks to Peter Applebaum, my compadre for over 50 years, Peter introduced me to all this incredible music. Peter was a very advanced musician at a young age. You know, a weird phrase, child prodigy, but he was able to play like an adult when he was a kid. And we started going to concerts together. And 7th grade, we started going to Keystone Corner. And, you know, first concert I saw in 7th grade was Eddie Harris. And the second concert I saw was Ralph Vaughan Roland Kirk. And by the time we were in 9th grade, I'd sing, you know, the Art Ensemble and
Wow.
Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers and Cecil. And we were going to see Cecil Taylor, and we were into all this music. And David Murray was from Berkeley, and I'd seen David and Butch Morris play together. That was either 7th or 8th grade. And we were just exposed to all. I try to explain to people that it wasn't really considered avant-garde jazz. It was just the way jazz was played post John Coltrane in a place like the Bay Area, which was such both a melting pot and a place where advanced ways of thinking were really celebrated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People had a chance. You know, I try to explain to people, I said, I tried to do the math in my head and recreate things, I don't remember bebop musicians. I don't remember people playing like that when I was young. Everybody was playing in this kind of very of the moment way. So, um, what happened was when I got to New York in 1979, so I went to Columbia University. So September 79, or actually end of August 79, I get to New York City. That's the beginning of the punk funk era. So now you have Defunkt, James White and the Blacks. And that was just the right place and the right time for me because it made so much sense to me because now I'm hearing people like, I always tell people, funk, if you grew up in Berkeley when I did, funk is our lingua franca. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the music of our youth. Like the Beatles is not the music of my youth. Funk isn't, I'm too old, I'm too young for that.
Yeah. Especially with Tower of Power. Yeah.
Tower of Power, I try to explain, Lenny Pickett and we tell this story that in Berkeley, Tower of Power, when I grew up, Tower of Power was way more famous than the Beatles. You talk to people from Long Island, they were like, the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, when we grew up, Tower of Power was our music. And then we all danced to Parliament and the Ohio Players
Yeah.
and that kind of music. And of course, Sly was the progenitor
Yeah.
of all that music.
Yeah.
And
Local
so the Bay
DJ.
Area-
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that, when I got to New York and I heard people mixing funk music and avant-garde music, that was like, oh, now I see how this can be done. It's not separate entities. It's whatever gumbo you want to make.
Nice. One thing that's always struck me about your career is how you constantly move between very different musical worlds. Your newest release is especially intriguing because it's essentially two albums built from the same source material. One presents an acoustic trio, while the other hands those same performances to producer Scotty Hard for a complete sonic reimagining. How did that idea develop, and what interested you in hearing the same music through two completely different lenses?
Well, there's two sides to that story. And one is that I first heard, I guess it was 1980 or 81, probably was 80 though. A friend of mine had the Burning Spear record, Garvey's Ghost. I love that record. And I knew about dub music, because I had friends that had the Upsetters and, that stuff was kind of around. But I thought Garvey's Ghost was just a record. And then a couple of years later, I find someone says, oh, no, that's a dub record. That's a full dub record of the record Marcus Garvey. And once I realized that, because I had listened to Garvey's Ghost for so many years, not knowing it was a dub record, just thinking it was this really cool instrumental record. And once I started making records, I remember the very first record I made, which Hal Wilner produced, the collective trio Spanish Fly. I was already thinking, I wonder, we had got some really nice mixes on that record. I was like, wonder if we could do like a dub record. But, I was young. I didn't really have the means to do that or even like, who's going to do that? But I was always like, what would happen if you took the kind of music we make and make a complete dub reinvention of it? So I've been thinking about this for, close to 40 years. And I've also been thinking, maybe not quite that long, about this idea of making an acoustic trumpet trio record, which, there's not many trumpet trio records. It's not like a history of it. It's not like saxophone trios. And I always felt like something I could do that would be inherently original just by its nature. You know what I'm saying? Like it would allow me to have a kind of basically not original, but it would allow me to have a blank slate to work with. Now, I've always been fascinated by both surrealism and like the magic realism of the South American writers. So I was always into Andre Breton, and I was always into Cortázar and Borges and all those guys. And I remember reading that book, Hopscotch, where you could read the book and then you could read it a second time. And at the end of each chapter, there's a secondary set of chapters to go to. And it creates a different story with the same story. So I've always, and the surrealists were talking about the same thing, the idea of like, there's the reality we see, and then there's another reality. And of course, growing up in Berkeley, the whole idea of, I always tell people like a beautiful phrase I grew up with, which people don't use anymore, is opening the doors of perception.
Mm.
I always love that idea, opening the doors of perception. So this trio record just seemed like the perfect opportunity to manifest this.
Well, let's listen to some of the music you sent over for today's show. The first track you selected is Laurie Anderson's performance of Church of Panic. You spent the past several years touring with Laurie Anderson, and she's described you as one of her closest musical collaborators. What makes this performance special to you, and what should listeners listen for as this piece unfolds?
This piece I like because I don't think Laurie actually recorded this. She recorded it, but I don't think it was ever a released record. This is a piece her and Lou Reed worked on as Lou and Laurie would often just go into the studio. They would go out to dinner and afterwards say, let's go to the studio and do something, and it's one of those songs. And we kind of reinvented it as the band Sex Mob. And so for me, this one, the reason I chose, because I'm coming to the Bay Area with Sex Mob, I chose 2 Sex Mob pieces to play as opposed to the Resonation Trio. Just want to point that out.
Okay.
But you really get that feeling of Sex Mob one of the things about having a band for 30 years is that the communication is very direct, and you can really feel the song doesn't necessarily have an arrangement. It's just wherever Laurie starts singing or talking her words, we react. And this one, Brigham, our saxophone player, also plays guitar. So he's playing guitar in this, and actually there's a 5th member, Doug Wieselman, who has been playing with us forever as a guest. And he plays clarinet and guitar on the tour. So there's 2 guitars on this piece, and I'm playing electric slide trumpet. And basically I'm seeing myself as kind of doing what I heard Lou do on the recordings. And I'm kind of reacting to Laurie and playing kind of these counter phrases, and that it's just, it's a real unfolding as opposed to an arrangement. Right. And that's why so you really hear the band kind of do what we do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for setting that up. And let's give it a listen now. This is Laurie Anderson performing Church of Panic here on Backstage Bay Area.
My friend, the poet, Sharon Knowles, she teaches in college. And she says so many of her students now are really depressed. And there's been a big jump in suicides. And she doesn't really understand why. And so she tells them 3 things. 1, eat really good food. 2, get enough sleep. 3, try not to hate yourself so much. And with those 3 rules, you're set. I'm out on the ocean, on my own. No one ever tells you what it's like to be alone. I'm waving to you, out on the sea. I can see you, but you can't see me. Church of Panic, House of Bone. No one ever tells you what it's like to be alone. Church of Nothing, House of Bone. No one ever tells you what it's like to be alone. You said I'd never lie. church of nothing, house of bone. No one ever tells you what it's like to be alone. Church of panic, house of bone. No one ever tells you what it's like to be alone.
You're listening to Backstage Bay Area. That was Laurie Anderson with Church of Panic, selected by my guest, Stephen Bernstein. Stephen, one of the remarkable things about Sex Mob is that after nearly 30 years together, the band still sounds spontaneous. There are moments when it feels completely composed and others when it seems like everyone is discovering the music at exactly the same time. How has the band's chemistry evolved over those 3 decades? Is there a level of trust now that lets you simply start playing and let the music determine where the performance goes?
Well, Steve, the beauty of it is we started like that. A unique thing about our band, which is, I think, harkens back to the way music started, is we came up not in rehearsals, but playing live. This band started at the Knitting Factory, and there was a scene on the bottom floor back then called the Late Night Hang, and Michael Dorff decided kind of brilliantly that way before other people were doing it, he would set up a tap bar. And the idea is he had 2 performance spaces, and the idea was when people would get done with the performance, they'll just go down and have a tap beer and hang out. And then there's a band playing late at night, so you could just keep hanging. And so the show, we played Thursday nights from 11 to, I guess, 1 or 1:30, however long it went. And it was quite a wild scene, as you can imagine. So everything we did and everything we learned from playing for people. And as you could feel the people react, that would create the next thing that would happen. Do you know what I'm saying? So we're playing for the audience. Now, when that gig ended, we moved over to a club called Tonic, and we did Friday nights, and those were midnight gigs, and they got really popular to the point where, like, the models and the actors would show up in that whole situation that you get in New York.
Right.
But it was so wild. And by that point, I was living up in Nyack and having to drive down. It wasn't like we started at midnight. We showed up at midnight. And this was, and you could imagine Friday nights at midnight, things even get wild.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like we started there. And so everything we did, all the music we created not for ourselves, but for the people we were playing for. And I think we were given a real opportunity that, most musicians don't get. And we've continued on. And I always tell people, it's like, we're going to obviously play different. If we're in a beautiful opera house in Italy, we're not going to play the same way you're going to play at midnight in a smoky club.
Right.
Formerly smoky club. So it's allowed us to kind of really develop a lot of different language.
The second piece you brought us today is called Banachek, from Sex Mob's collaboration with producer Scotty Hard on The Hard Way. This recording seems to capture another side of the band, still unmistakably Sex Mob, yet filtered through Scotty Hard's production aesthetic. What drew you to this track? And what does it reveal about the musical conversation you built together over the years?
I like this track. It's funny, talk about Berkeley. For anyone who grew up there, all the used bookstores had used records as well when I was a kid. And so I used to go there all the time. There was a place, Pellucidor. There was all these little places. And I bought this record by Julius Hemphill called Dogon AD. And it had this track, I believe it was called the Hard Blues? I don't remember what it was called, but it was this great kind amazing big blues song with like trumpet and alto and drums and cello instead of bass. And I always loved it. And this track to me evokes that, which evokes a great feeling for me, but it's unmistakably, it's not at all like aping it. It just, to me, evokes this great track that I first heard when I was a very young person, but it's also, John Medeski's playing organ on it. And John has been part of our scene since the very beginning. I mean, he's on the first Sex Mob record. I'm on the first MMW record. And it just has this great, both kind of real sense of joy and exploration, and also this sense of like connection to the blues and all this stuff that I love so much.
Nice. So when we come back, we'll talk about your upcoming SFJAZZ residency and
Awesome.
And what you divided and why you divided it into two very different musical experiences. But for now, here's Banachek by Sex Mob and Scotty Hard here on Backstage Bay Area. We just heard Banachek by Sex Mob and Scotty Hart. Stephen, you're bringing Sex Mob to the Joe Henderson Lab for 4 nights, 2 shows per night, but you split the run into 2 distinct programs. The first 2 nights explore the psychedelic rock that emerged from the Bay Area in the 1960s, featuring guitarist Liberty Ellman. The second half shifts toward classic Latin soul, featuring percussionist John Santos. What inspired those 2 themes, and how do they reveal different sides of what Sex Mob can do?
Well, I've actually been thinking about this for a long time. I wanted to do Sex Mob Does the Bay. And that was my idea. Sex Mob Does the Bay. And so I can't even remember how far this goes back because it's such an obvious idea, you know? And I remember talking to this guy, I believe his name's Danny. He was like the lawyer for the Grateful Dead, and he was the roommate on Haight Street. And I'd met him over the years. And it's been a long time since I've seen him. And I remember when I had this idea and I asked him, you know, back in those days, like, what were the bands that you guys listened to? And he said, man, we listened to Moby Grape and Quicksilver.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm too young for that. Like, I didn't really know that, you know? And I was like, okay, good. There's stuff I don't know about because my parents, who were, you know, straighter than many Berkeley parents, but still definitely hipper than most East Coast parents. We had, he had mainly jazz records and classical records and, you know, Jewish comedy records, that kind of stuff. But they had 2 Jefferson Airplane records and Big Brother and Holding Company. So that's like my earliest memories from the Bay Area are like, you know, having those records around. You know, I've always been kind of this idea in my head, like of doing this. And of course the Latin soul is just such an obvious thing because to me, that's such a you know, I have a friend from Berkeley named Charlene Jones, and she calls us the Gumbo children. And we all grew up in this incredible melting pot. I mean, you know, I think growing up in Berkeley and the time I did was just such a gift. And that you know, when I moved to New York, I loved, we got turned on to salsa music in Berkeley because there were a lot of people playing the conga drums at the place called The Yard in Sproul Plaza. There was a lot of Afro-Cuban music, but, you know, we didn't have and there were salsa bands, but not like New York. When I moved to New York, I ended up playing with like, you know, New York salsa bands. And it was clear to me how different it was than the Bay Area because everything in the Bay Area had that gumbo feeling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And so like all, and the obvious one, of course, is Santana because he got so famous. Now, Azteca and Malo did not get so famous, but they were such kind of typical Bay Area bands. And then you had Cal Jade, like, and so many bands had conga drums in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a very Bay Area thing. So that alone is like the Afro-Latin influence. And Sly had a lot of tunes that really early on that were like very directly related to Latin music. And I just thought that would be a really fun thing to do because I just think NFL a great way to celebrate the heritage of the Bay Area.
Exactly.
You know, it's about celebrating heritage. You know, I'm a big patriot. I tell people, listen, man, because I remember I have a friend in Berkeley, and one time I had to rent a car with an American flag on it. She goes, "Oh man, American flag." I said, "Wait a second, babe. America? What do you think? Louis Armstrong, Jimi Hendrix? I mean, come on, this is America, baby. It's you know, Miles Davis. I mean, and that's really the heritage of this country.
Yeah,
the real heritage of America.
Yeah,
is all this beautiful art that came out of this incredible gumbo, and out of the Bay Area in particular.
Yeah.
Now, when we do this is obviously not going to be like a cover band. We're going to take these songs and explore.
Nice.
But the idea is taking this specific repertoire and doing what we do with it and having these 2 incredible musicians, you know, Liberty Ellman, who is not going to be your typical rock guitar player, and John Santos, who's, you know, such an amazing, you know, kind of historian and keeper of the flame. And me telling him, don't worry about that, man. Just listen and play. Do your thing.
Yeah. Hey, when you're doing the 60s show with Larry Ellman, I understand you're going to step outside of the Bay Area And you, as you mentioned, might do some Jimi Hendrix music.
We might. I did say that, and then I ended up with so many great songs. But yeah. I mean, listen, Hendrix. Hendrix plays Berkeley. Come on, he might as well be from Berkeley.
Well, actually, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I've written 3 books on Jimi Hendrix, and there was a time when his mother in Seattle had another child, Leon, and it was a bit more for her to handle because her husband, Al, was overseas fighting in World War II. So she gave up Jimmy to live with a family in Berkeley, and I've got the address where they lived a short amount of time until Al found out and came back to reclaim Jimmy and bring him back up to Seattle. So for a short period of time, Jimi Hendrix had a Berkeley residence.
What is the address? Where do you live?
I'll send that to you. I have it's now like an auto repair shop.
Okay.
But I thought you might enjoy that bit of trivia.
I really enjoy that, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah.
I believe my next project will be a Jimi Hendrix project.
Oh, Lord.
I don't want to get too far ahead of
Lord have mercy. Okay, we got sidetracked.
It's another dream I've had forever. And I always tell people that when I moved to New York, you could still feel Jimi Hendrix in the air. Because it had only been 10 years since he died, right? Didn't he die in 69?
70.
Oh, 70. So it had only been 9 years since he died.
Yeah.
And I just said, I felt like you felt Jimi Hendrix in the sidewalk of New York.
Wow. In fact, they just named, we're getting sidetracked here. They just named Jimi Hendrix Way recently in New York. And
well, I have a bunch of Jimi Hendrix songs in my repertoire. So don't be shocked if it happens. But when I do these gigs, I'll have a big repertoire of songs, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Sorry about getting sidetracked there, but
that's okay, man.
Jimi Hendrix DNA popped up there. So for someone who's deciding which nights to attend, what makes each program a unique experience? I guess they should come to both, right?
I'd say come to both because, when you get an electric guitar, electric guitar is such a magic instrument. And so when the band plays an electric guitar, there's this thing that happens that's very unique. Now, when you play with a percussion, what it does is it amps up the kind of groove part and kind of really makes that part of the band that more kind of dynamic and kind of, it creates a whole nother level. And, rhythm, I always tell people the 2 most essential parts of music are, in order, sound and rhythm, because sound is what we get. That's our ears hear sound. So obviously it's essential, but rhythm is what we feel in our bodies, which is like the base way of like understanding everything. And I'm just kind of thinking like, wow, this magic of like having John Santos adding his rhythmic magic to what we've already got going on is and I just think it's a really cool repertoire. I mean, some of the stuff is, obviously gonna be a little more obscure, but boy, you get to those Santana melodies, and that is just embedded. If you're from the Bay Area, some of those melodies are just so embedded in us because
it's the heartbeat of the Bay Area.
Yeah, man, it really is. I mean, everyone had a Santana record at their house. Like, no one did not have a Santana record.
multiple copies. And they were, well, we're getting sidetracked here. I was going to bring up K-Sam, but anyway, you hit a nerve, Stephen. Anyway, let me tell our listeners about the show. Stephen Bernstein and the Sex Mob perform at the Joe Henderson Lab at the SFJAZZ Center from Thursday, July 16th through Sunday, July 19th as part of the 2026 SFJAZZ Summer Sessions. The July 16th and 17th performances celebrate the Bay Area's psychedelic rock tradition featuring special guest Liberty Ellman. The July 18 and 19 performances turn to classic Latin soul featuring special guest the great John Santos. Showtimes are at 7 and 8:30 p.m. Thursday through Saturday, and 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. on Sunday, the last night of the residency. Tickets are available now at sfjazz.org, and we'll include a link in the podcast show notes for this episode. Stephen, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Steve Roby. I hope I get to see you at the gigs.
Absolutely.
Right on, man. Come up and say hello. See you
Okay.
soon.
Thanks.
Hello, Bay Area.
All
See you
right.
guys in a few weeks.
Backstage Bay Area will be right back after these messages.
Are you a jazz musician preparing for a run in San Francisco? The Backstage Bay Area podcast wants to help tell your story. We are currently filling our guest lineup with the artists keeping the jazz scene alive. If you have dates booked at a local club or concert hall, let's get you on the mic to discuss your latest work. Connect with us directly. Send an email to backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Just let us know when you'll be playing in San Francisco. That's backstage.sfbay@gmail.com.
Backstage Bay Area is dedicated to keeping jazz alive in the 415 by spotlighting the artists, presenters, and venues that sustain this music. The most meaningful way to support local jazz is simple. Show up, buy a ticket, and experience the music live. Visit BackstageBayArea.com and explore our upcoming concerts section, featuring both a weekly guide and a weekend guide to jazz shows across the region, plus the latest concert news. Thank you for keeping jazz alive in the 415.
You've been listening to the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Visit us on the web at BackstageBayArea.com. And don't forget to keep jazz alive in the 415.